पेपर ले लिया आप बहुत बात करते हैं क्या हो गया ओडिया हो गए बंगाली से हां कहां करते हैं ये लोग जाते हैं कौन सा ये वाला इधर है सर बंगाल में कहां हां पांतो भात बोलते हैं ना पांतो भात बंगाली है बेसिकली बंगाली है बंगाली की बोल सकते हैं हां बहुत लोग हैं ना ऐसे बेसिकली बंगाली में पूरा वही संजय साहब पूरा बंगाली है बंगाली है ऐसे ही बोल रहे हैं आकाश का ऐसे हां नहीं आपको मैं इन्फॉर्म कर देता हूँ एक दो चीज आपको एक सेकंड उसको मैं क्या क्या चाहिए डॉक्टर रंजन कुमार वाले से खोला सर दोनों जजेस को थोड़ा फोन करके बताएंगे तो मैडम बोली मैं किसी को आप थोड़ा रिक्वेस्ट कीजिए राहुल सर को पढ़ना सबका क्लियर करिए अरे वो करने का काम है उसको मत उसका प्रॉब्लम ईगो प्रॉब्लम है सब तो वही है ना सर आप कुछ नहीं प्रोग्राम खत्म हो खराब होना ना सर सब जितना लोग आएगा स्टार्ट कर देना ठीक है ये लोग डिस्कस करने बैठेंगे तो टाइम कहाँ है उतना का टाइम हमारे पास पहले आके नमस्कार चलिए वो नमस्कार बोलने के लिए 10 मिनट तो क्या है नहीं आप मैडम बंदे बड़ा बोल दीजिए सुनो रिपोर्ट रिपोर्ट व्हाट आई एम टेलिंग आई एम जस्ट गोइंग टू से जो रिपोर्ट है टीम 1 टोटल टीम 1 का ओरल पोस्टर लेके एक ही लोग बोलेंगे अभी हु इज गोइंग टू से लोग हैं इसका नाम नहीं वो कोऑर्डिनेट करेंगे नाम प्रिपेयर कौन सा मतलब कितना पे एक वन स्लाइड आई विल गिव 3 मिनट्स 2 मिनट्स लिख के दूंगा नहीं वो मैं बोला 3 मिनट्स 4 मिनट्स लिख के दे दूंगा कैसे करना है वो भी हां वन मैक्सिमम 1 स्लाइड और मैक्सिमम 3 मिनट्स कल मेन नोट नहीं किया वो डीआरआर लड़का उससे नहीं देना है बट आप पोस्टर प्रेजेंटेशन में हमारा नहीं ठीक है उनसे भी थोड़ा आपको इंफॉर्मेशन देना हमारा बॉस है ना तो आपको ना अभी उठ रहा है नहीं वो नहीं वो तो देना है ना उसके अंदर थीम के अंदर सो थीम के अंदर देना है गुरु को बोल देता तुरंत दे देंगे हाँ जो कुछ भी वो इंफॉर्मेशन एक ही लोग बोलेंगे ठीक है अदरवाइज इट विल टेक सो मच ऑफ टाइम सुनील जी इसको रख दीजिए वहाँ पे बोलना है आप प्रिपेयर करके रखिए 9 दिसंबर को ऑर्डर है डॉक्टर साहब पोस्टर फिर 10 बजे शुरू होगा हाँ आपका वाला कोई इशू नहीं योर इट इज स्टार्टिंग एट फोन कलानी बुझिले देयर इज नो सच इशू वी सर्कुलेटेड टू ऑल द डेलीगेट्स आल्सो आपण बुझी कि मते व्हाट्सएप रे मैसेज करले तो एकदम ना देना हां अच्छा हां भाई हां करिया सीनियर हो जाएगा हां तो झिया ताको पागल करछि सी मते पागल करछि आ बुझिले नहीं वीडियो गेम नहीं सी नेटी पे कोन पढु दे रहल कोन तार हां ठीक है वो लिखि दउ छी 11टा परे जाना पड़िबो अपन टे मन रखिथिबे 11टा परे टिके ठीक ठीक ठीक
कहि दउ छे हला 11टा पर टिके मने पकेकी आपण टिके बुझी की मते कहिबे किंतु हला ओके 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 ठीक है
भैया नमस्ते
ಫುಲ್ ಓಪನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಯಾವಾಗ ಇದನ್ನು ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾ ಆರ್ಎಸ್ ಓಪನ್ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಅಲ್ಲಲ್ಲ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ ಹಿಂಗೂ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿಂದ ನೀವು ಗೂಗಲ್ ಕ್ರೋಮ್ ಹೋಗಿ ಗೂಗಲ್ ಕ್ರೋಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಓಪನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಬಟ್ ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇದೆ ಹಿಂಗೇನಿಲ್ಲ ಓಪನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಓಪನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗಿರೋದು ಡಬಲ್ ಕ್ಲಿಕ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಡ್ರಿ ನೀವು ಕ್ಲಿಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಇದು ಮಾಡೋದು ಬೆಸ್ಟ್ ಅದ 100% ಫೇಲ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಶೇರ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಇದೇ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಇದು ಏನೋ ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಪೋಸ್ಟ್ಗಳು ಫಾಂಟ್ ನೀವು ಪೋಸ್ಟ್ಗಳು ನಾವು ಹಾಕಬೇಕು ಪೋಸ್ಟ್ ನಂಬರ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸೆಕ್ಯೂರಿಟಿ ಮಾಡೋ ನಿಮಿಷ ಸೆಕ್ಯೂರಿಟಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇರಬಾರ್ದು ಶೇರ್ ಆಲ್ ಪಾರ್ಟಿಸಿಪೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಕ್ಲಿಕ್ ಆಗಿದ್ರೆ ಅವರು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಡ್ರಿ ಶೇರ್ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅನೋಟೇಷನ್ ಬರಲ್ಲ ನೀವು ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡ್ರಿ ಇಮೇಜ್ ಅಪ್ಲೋಡ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಪ್ಯಾಲೆಟ್ ನಂಬರ್ಸ್ ಜೂಮ್ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಜೂಮ್ ಆಗ್ತಾವ ಏನು ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಆದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಕಳ್ಸ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಬಾ ಇಮೇಜ್ ಬಾ
क्योंकि इसमें बोल दीजिए राहुल सर। Hello, hello, Dr. Rahul, are you speaking? Are you hearing me?
Yeah. I
Okay.
can hear you.
I was just testing the mic, whether it is functioning okay or not.
Yeah, it's very good. Very
Okay.
nicely your voice is coming.
Okay, thank you.
Madam, good morning.
কোস্ট এটা অ্যাড হবো আচ্ছা একটু জেনারেল বডি দরকার এটা আগে বলা না এটা আমার ঠিক আছে এখানে কিছু কাউন্টার দরকার না এটা মেইন পার্ট কোর্স হবে মডেল ಮಾಡಿ ನಮಗೆ ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಕರಿয়ে
नहीं कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं। आप देखिए राजा साहब आ गए शर्मा सर भी आ गए। डॉक्टर AR हाँ
सर प्रणाम। डॉक्टर शर्मा साहब प्रणाम। डॉक्टर AK नाइक स्पीकिंग सर। शर्मा साहब प्रणाम।
सर गुड मॉर्निंग सर।
सर प्रणाम। डॉक्टर नाइक स्पीकिंग। नमस्कार। डॉक्टर राजा।
सर गुड मॉर्निंग सर।
गुड मॉर्निंग।
Yesterday very nice sir, great session.
Okay, thank you. My voice is clear, na? My voice is clear to you? Hello?
हाँ
No,
सर।
your voice is
Are you able to
clear,
listen
sir.
to me?
It is audible.
It's audible, na?
Yeah.
Dr. Naik,
Yes sir.
you said that you'll be sharing the particulars of the speaker beforehand so that you can introduce them.
Sir, can you speak a bit loudly or close to the speaker?
Okay. You can't say that you'll be sharing the particulars of the speaker.
Sir,
so that you can introduce them before the session.
Sir, there is no need of doing those formality. That will kill time. Very limited times are there. Simply, those speakers are, sir, you know, Dr. Himanshu Pathak, Dr. Vishwapati Mandal. So those people, they don't need those people, they don't need introduction. And the last speaker is Pete Smith.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Dr. Pete Smith,
I don't know about it.
Dr. Srinivas Rao, Director NARM, sir. So those people, I think the NRM audience, they don't need it, and you know them. So one line introduction is enough, sir. Sir, we are
What
moving
about
to
Dr. Pete?
Sir, Pete Smith is Dr. Pete Smith. Sir, should I send immediately to you the so 2 lines about Pete Smith?
If you can send, otherwise I will just share in Plant and Soil Science Institute of Biological and Environmental Sciences.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's a truth. Yeah, yeah. And he's a very he's a international
I note down.
sir. He's a international acclaimed environmental scientist.
International.
He is a fellow of Royal Society of Science in London, and he is the Prabasi fellow of Indian National Science Academy, and he is holding several posts there in UK.
Just
So, is not possible. So,
very
so 2-3 line is sufficient.
International environment, sir.
सर मैं आपको दे देता हूँ.
हाँ बता
हाँ
दीजिए थोड़ा
हाँ
शॉर्ट
तो देखा ना वो जो थिंग 2 का जो देखा ना नहीं वो जो सर Professor Smith, Pete Smith is a professor of soil and global change at Institute of Biological and Environmental Science at the University of Aberdeen. Professor of soil and global change.
And global
change.
Global change.
At the Institute of Biological and Environmental Sciences. At the University of Aberdeen, Scotland, UK.
Okay.
And also he is holding Science Director of Scottish Climate Change Centre. Science Director of Scottish Climate Change Centre of Expertise.
Scottish Climate Change Centre.
Scottish Climate Change Centre of Expertise. His interests include climate change mitigation, soils, agriculture, food systems, ecosystem services, and modeling. He is a fellow of Royal Society of Biology.
Yes.
A fellow of Institute of Soil Scientists. A fellow of Royal Society of Edinburgh. A foreign fellow of Indian National Science Academy.
Okay.
A fellow of European Science Academy. A fellow of European Science Academy. Last one is a fellow of Royal Society London. Sir, Dr. Pathak, fellow of INSA, fellow of NASI, fellow of NAS. And Dr. Chiranjeev Srinivas Rao, fellow of NAS, and Dr. Pathak, Dr. Chaudhary साहब तो है ये मंडल जी fellow of NAS. उसे INSA fellow दोनों है नहीं. ठीक सर?
There is some problem with my voice. It is not clearly audible.
Sir, my voice.
My voice is not clear.
Now it is audible, sir. So if you are speaking close to the speaker, it's audible.
Good morning, sir.
Sir, good morning. Dr. Nayak speaking.
Sarmaji, Srinivasan Rao.
Sir, pranam.
Good morning, Mandal Saab. Good morning.
Very good morning.
Good morning, Rao.
Rao Saab, namaskar.
Happy to see you.
Dr. Nayak
Namaskar.
speaking.
After a long time.
Namaskar, Dr. Naik. Namaskar.
Namaskar. It's a pleasure to see you on screen and listen to your presentation, sir.
Sharma ji, namaskar.
Namaskar.
Sir, good morning. Dr. Sharma, good morning.
नमस्कार
नमस्कार नमस्कार। और सब कैसे हैं?
सर प्रणाम, पाठक साहब प्रणाम।
नमस्कार नमस्कार नायक साहब नमस्कार।
कोरोना की चपेट में आने से 2 महीने से थोड़े परेशान रहे।
डॉक्टर साहब आवाज थोड़ा कम आ रहा है थोड़ा सा। हेलो।
2 महीने से थोड़े परेशान थे, कोरोना की चपेट में आ गए थे।
हाँ बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, मुझे पता चला था। असल में आपके वाइस चांसलर साहब बता रहे थे, अरविंद कुमार जी, वो आप कमेटी में आ नहीं पा रहे थे ना उस समय, तो नास वाली कमेटी में, तो तभी डॉक्टर साहब बता रहे थे कि डॉक्टर साहब थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम में आ गए। नाउ यू आर फुल्ली रिकवर्ड।
80% टाइम हो गया, बस still some weakness is there.
हाँ
पाठक सर शुरू किया जाए?
हाँ सर।
ओके
सर
हाँ डॉक्टर साहब आप शुरू करिए। डॉक्टर साहब, डॉक्टर गणनायक साहब।
हाँ सर,
हाँ आप शुरू करिए सर।
डॉक्टर नाइक डीडी साहब आ गए हैं?
हाँ सर, डीडी साहब आ गए हैं। डीडी साहब इज देयर।
डीडी सर there, sir.
हाँ।
So very good morning to all of you, sir. I welcome you all to this. Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yes, Dr. Ganayak, you are audible.
सुबुची गणनायक आ गया। सुबुची
सर
सर
नमस्कार सर। सर
नमस्कार
नमस्कार।
नमस्कार नमस्कार।
डॉक्टर साहब गुड मॉर्निंग।
वेरी गुड मॉर्निंग। नमस्कार।
आप दिल्ली पहुंच गए ना?
जी रात को पहुंच गए।
ठीक है। ओके गणनायक साहब, प्लीज कंटिन्यू।
Sir, very good morning to all of you, sir. I welcome all the participants, the co-chairs, and all the conveners and the speaker to this second day of first Indian Rice Congress. And this technical session is 4A, which is on sustainable rice farming, sir. Myself, sir, L.M. Ganayak, Dean Extension Education. I have the honor to introduce, sir, both the chairs, co-chairs to this meeting. One of the co-chairs is our DDG, Natural Resource Management, Professor S.K. Chaudhary, sir, and Dr. A.R. Sharma is another co-chair, sir. Both are very well-known person to at least to this group and as a whole, and in general to the rice workers all over India as well as abroad also. Dr. Chaudhary, sir, because one template has been given where they need not to introduce both the co-chairs. Till then, sir, I have the honor to introduce our co-chair, Dr. S.K. Chaudhary. He is now Deputy Director General, Natural Resource Management. He is a soil physicist and a specialization in irrigation water management, as well as management of saline soil and also quality water. And many rewards and awards has been endorsed on Dr. Chaudhary sir. Need not to explain those things. He is a recipient of Rafi Ahmad Kidwai Award, then Salinity Excellence Award, also Outstanding Achievement Award of Indian Institute of Engineers, Tata Endowment Award. Many more will be there, sir. This list may not be update one. Again, sir, I have the honor to welcome you to this meeting, sir. Dr. Chaudhary sir. Then Dr. A.R. Sharma is now Director of Research, Rani Lakshmibai Central Agriculture University, as an agronomist, and was the Secretary of the Indian Society of Agronomy also. He has also both our co-chairs have served in Odisha. Dr. Sharma has served 9 years in Central Rice Research Institute, and now it is NRRI. and Dr. Chaudhary was also heading the AICRP on water management and water technology center. Now it is Indian Institute of Water Management. So Ninder to again sir, Sharma sir, to the agronomist and soil scientist group. They are also the recipient of Jal and Air Award, IPCO Award, then also the Best Worker Award of the CRRA Cuttack, Young Scientist Award, Dhiru Morarji Memorial Awards. Many more will be there. Both are these are last fellow. Both have our co-chairs. Then Dr. Sharma's specialization is in nutrient management, weed management. Now he is best known as the conservationist, I can say, but he is a conservation agronomist or agriculturist in India. So I have the honor to welcome you both the chairs to chair this session. And this session will be on sustainable rice farming. We have 4 speakers and very eminent speakers. And I just remind sir, all my co-chairs that all these speakers are long duration means man. So they can extend this time to any limit. So I request both the chairs, sir. My speakers are Dr. S. Pathak sir. He is now director ICAR-NIM. Then Dr. Srinivas Rao, he is the director of NAM. Then Professor Vishwapati Mandal, BCKV professor sir. And we have also one our overseas scientist, Dr. Pete Smith from Aberdeen, UK. So now I, sir, with this short welcome to all the co-chairs, I also welcome the another convener, co-convener, Dr. Nayak, and my rapporteur also, Tikam Singh as well as Rahul Tripathi to this session. So over to you, sir, to the chairs to conduct this session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Good morning to each one of you. It is a proud privilege to be here in this August gathering today. And in this session on sustainable agriculture, we have 4 eminent speakers, as said by Dr. Garnayak. And a lot of good scientists are present here, although the number is only 58. But I find a blend of very experienced scientists, senior scientists, and young scientists. This is a great opportunity to be here. And before I get into the whole business, I understand the limitations of timing because many other parallel sessions are also going on that will lead somewhere to some common plenary. And we'll have probably close to 1 hour and 45 minutes time available with us. So 4 speakers are there, and each one of them, they are very, very eminent speaker. And what we will do, we will restrict the timing, 20 minutes presentation and the 5 to 7 minutes interaction. If this is okay, we will start the session. My colleague, Dr. A.R. Sharma is here with me, and we shall try to finish the presentations timely so that you have enough time to go for other sessions and manage the activities of this International Rice Congress. So first, right in the beginning, I would like to invite, although it is mentioned that it is mandatory on the part of chairman to introduce each speaker, but speakers are so eminent, they hardly require any introduction. But still, just as a brief formality, I would like to introduce Dr. Himanshu Pathak, who himself was instrumental in checking out the whole program of this Rice Congress. And when he was director of CRRI and now NRRI, and now presently he is the director of one of very important institute, National Institute for Abiotic Stress Management in NRM division. And Dr. Pathak is a very well-known scientist, whether it is in the area of climate change science or environment science or whatever you call. So if you consider overall the gamut of natural resources or sustainable natural resources or sustainable agriculture, the names Dr. Himanshu Pathak or C. Srinivas Rao or Dr. Vishwapati Mandal or A.R. Sharma, these are well-known names. So my job is very easy, and all of them, they are my very close colleague and very close friends as well. So first I invite Dr. Himanshu Pathak for his talk on abiotic stress management for sustainable rice farming. We'll be talking about abiotic stresses and with respect to sustainability in rice farming. So Dr. Himanshu, presentation timing, as I said, please make a 20 minutes presentation, and then thereafter we'll open the presentation for discussion for 5 to 7 minutes. Please. Dr. Himanshu Patel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chaudhary, Dr. Sarma, Dr. Ganayak, Dr. Nayak, Rahul, Jitin Singhji, Dr. Srinivas Rao, Dr. Vishwapati Mandal, and of course, Pete Smith, who is going to join us, and all the distinguished participants. Let me also welcome each and every one of you in this first Indian Rice Congress, which we have started yesterday. Yesterday, we really had all the sessions, excellent, very good deliberations, very major points came. So today, I will be presenting very briefly about abiotic stress management for sustainable rice farming. Just to talk something about rice, as you know, that this year, the country had the highest amount of rice production, 117 million tons milled rice, 176 million tons of paddy, but also it came along with a large amount of residue. This is the crop which feeds 0.8 billion people, harvested from 43 to 44 million hectare, grown by 67 million farm families with annual value of 53 billion US dollar. Livelihood gives 150 million rural people, 40% of them are poor. But from natural management side, it also receives 29% of total irrigation water rice consumes in the country. 37% of total fertilizer goes to rice. And 3.5 million tons of methane is also emitted by this crop. So if you take any parameter, whether it is area, production, or even environmental parameter, rice is number one. Rice is number one in this country. Rice is ubiquitous. It is grown everywhere, every season. We say that in this country, at least there will be some region somewhere rice is being grown. Whether it is irrigated, saline, acidic, below sea level, hills, mountains, deep water, you go everywhere and you can find rice. Now this is very, very good to hear that it is grown everywhere. But when you grow rice everywhere, particularly in unfavorable situations, then you also call for lots of trouble, lots of trouble. And some of those aspects I would like to discuss. This is the area of rice, mostly irrigated 60%, rain-fed 40%. Out of these 40%, 70% are in Eastern India. And then of course, out of this 40, again, 75%, 23 rain-fed and 73% rain-fed lowland area. This is how we grow rice, mostly kharif, but also we grow it in rabi. We also grow it in summer. And these are the distribution of the areas. Of course, productivity-wise, you can also see that in these three seasons distributed, but again, major production comes from the rabi season. If you see the ecology-wise, as I told, that kharif irrigated area is largest one, 22 million hectare, but then we have got around 1.3 in deep water kharif, rain-fed kharif around 11.8, and rain-fed upland 4.8 to 5 million hectare. So this is the distribution of rice. But as I said, you can grow rice anywhere, but as you move towards the unfavorable areas, there are lots of abiotic stresses. Stresses starting from moisture, whether it is drought or flood, nutrient, radiation, temperature, pollution, salinity, or even some mechanical damage, wind, hailstorm. And wherever there is a stress, the productivity goes down. Stress reduces growth as well as productivity. And most often, rice is not only subjected to one stress. At any point of time, it is subjected to several stresses. And as I say, and I repeat, more unfavorable area means more stresses. Unfortunately, the stresses are also intensifying. It is increasing day by day. Climate change is aggravating, water stress, depleting groundwater, drainage problem. Again, these are aggravating, soil quality going down, nutrient deficiencies emerging almost year by year. Pollution is also accelerating. And again, when we see this kind of COVID-19 and lockdown situation, in this particular situation, you will find that all these stresses sometimes intensify. Projection is again more alarming, whether the projections by IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or even our own projections, it says that the frequency as well as intensity of extreme events of climate like cyclone, heavy rain, heat wave, flood, drought, all are going to intensify in times to come. So these are the problems. It is not only that the abiotic factors are putting stress on rice. Rice also puts stress on others. rice also creates problem for other components of the ecosystem. So this is just one example how burning of rice residues, and just for last few weeks, we have been listening a lot about burning of rice straw in northwestern part of our country. And there are several estimates. We also did our own estimate how much amount of rice straw is being burned. The quantity is huge. Quantity is huge, and the impact of that burning is also huge. One estimate of IFRI, International Food Policy Research Institute, shows that around 2 lakh crore rupees per year is the cost of stubble burning only from Punjab, Haryana, and Delhi. And my friends, now this rice straw burning is limited, or we mostly talk about northwestern part of the country, but it is spreading to all other parts of the country. This is one analysis which we did, that in which district how much amount of surplus rice residue is available. And if you find this, almost every district is now going to have some amount of surplus rice residues. And whenever there is surplus rice residues, those residues probably will be burnt to dispose them of. So the problem is going to intensify, and it is also going to extend in larger areas, not limited to Punjab and Haryana. We talk about greenhouse gas emission. Again, we compare the emission of greenhouse gases from different crops, and you can see that lowland rice emits the largest amount of greenhouse gases, mostly methane, but the quantity is very large, more than double in comparison to sugarcane. And if you compare other crops, then it is probably 3 times, 4 times, or even 5 times. These are the problems. Dr. Nayak, who is also the convener, calculated the water footprints of rice production in different states of our country. And you can see that rice, as I told, around 30% of total irrigation water in this country goes to rice. Of course, no doubt that is also going to have a very large water footprint. Not only large water footprint, it is also having large carbon footprint. Another study of Dr. Nayak shows how carbon footprint varies from state to state when we grow rice. So therefore, though rice is so important crop for this country, and not only for this country or the whole world, but there are some concerns. And yesterday in our plenary lecture, as well as in our inauguration session, our Honorable Director General and also Honorable Member Niti Aayog raised several concerns and questions about growing rice. 3 concerns, economic concern. And what Dr. Ramesh Chand said, that rice production is not sustainable at current price with current production level, economic wise. For environmental point wise, he said he doesn't know, but then probably I shall try to give you some information. As it consumes large amount of water, carbon, and energy, and it is having large footprints, so in unfavorable areas, not everywhere, but in unfavorable areas, this is not sustainable. But then the question of social concern, whether socially we need rice, whether socially we can really leave rice from some places and concentrate on some other. I shall show you some analysis. So therefore, whenever we grow rice in unfavorable areas, there are a few costs associated. One is, of course, high economic cost because low yield and low income. And if you want to produce high yield in those unfavorable areas, then the cost to achieve that yield, cost to achieve that high yield is also very high. So you have to really invest a lot to harvest higher yield in unfavorable areas. What about the environmental cost? It is not only emission of greenhouse gases or large water footprint, it actually erodes the resource base. It erodes the resource base and it becomes unsustainable after some time. And day to day, the things go from bad to worse, That is the problem. We did some kind of calculation of estimating environmental cost of rice farming. 2 costs we generally talk about. One is, of course, economic, the way generally our economists calculate budget, but we also calculated which we call as green budget. So our environmental cost was price due to the positive impacts minus the cost due to the negative impacts. And when we put this environmental cost along with net income, then we get what we call as green income. And all of you know probably the different factors of ecosystem services. So we used all those factors only, and then we could generate some data in different parts of our country, Punjab, Haryana, IRI, and then we calculated what is going to be the environmental cost of growing rice when you go for transplanted rice and when you go for. Briefly to tell you that for transplanted rice, environmental cost is around 10% of the total net income from rice, 10% of total net income. When you go for direct seeded rice, then that cost reduced from 10% to 7%. So 7% of the net income is the negative impact on the environment which is going to have due to rice farming. Just to give you one idea what is the meaning of this one. As if you can take that from 1960 till today, agriculture has grown at a rate of around 4% average. Sometimes it is less, sometimes it is more. But if you take it as 4%, and then environmental cost, as I showed to you, 7 to 10%. Out of this 7 to 10%, at least 50% of this cost will be having long-lasting effects. So average could be 4%. So your growth is 4%, but environmental cost is also 4%. So if you calculate the green budget or green income, then probably it is 0, 4 minus 4. So if you include all the costs which you have impacted upon the environment, all the natural resources, then probably you will come out with a 0 growth in agriculture. So this is the net impact when we go for environmental cost calculation. So then the question comes how to manage these abiotic stresses in rice to make it environment friendly, to make it economic friendly. Three aspects, three things can be done. One is, of course, avoidance. Avoid, do not grow rice in the abiotic stress regions or stressed regions, in unfavorable areas. Is it possible? I shall show you. Second one is, of course, adapt. Use technologies to reduce the stress on rice. Several technologies are available. I shall just mention a few. And then, of course, alleviate. Use technologies to reduce the stress from rice, like burning of residues, methane emission, and so on. So all these three, avoid, adapt, and alleviate, probably could be the strategies of sustainable rice farming. So for avoidance, we say that crop to be grown in favorable areas, using mostly natural-based resources, with minimum amount of, not zero, minimum amount of external inputs, and of course, grow in favorable seasons, not only favorable area, but also favorable seasons. There is no need of growing rice in summer season when you have to apply 25 to 30 irrigation. For adaptation, the crop has to be more resilient to heat, drought, flood, and salinity. And this can be achieved by new variety, by new technologies for efficient natural resource management. And then third one is the alleviation. Crop has to be more efficient in water use, fertilizer use, energy use, and of course, recycling, reuse of residues like rice straw. All of this. Now, the first one is, can we avoid growing rice in unfavorable areas? We did some kind of analysis, which we call as ecoregion-based rice farming. What we have done that we tried to analyze which are the regions in the country which are favorable for growing rice. And for that one, to make it simple, we took three parameters. One is adequate rainfall, fertility of the soil, and of course, congenial temperature. When we took these three parameters and then tried to classify the whole agriculture, the whole rice area into different suitability class, unsuitable, moderately suitable, suitable, and very suitable, then this is the map which comes up. All the grid areas are the areas which are suitable, very suitable. And then of course, magenta one is the one which are suitable. And so if you grow rice in these areas and avoid the unsuitable areas, this is the areas which are favorable. But the question then immediately is asked, can these suitable ecoregions produce enough rice to meet the demand? We did that analysis also. And what we observed that yes, it is possible. How it is possible? So for example, demand of rice by 2030, paddy, not milk. Paddy rice is going to be around 200 million tons. Current productivity is around 3.8 to 4 tons per hectare. Current area, for example, 44. So if you can increase productivity from 4 to 5, then we need 40 million hectares. So 4 million hectares can be left out. But if we can increase the productivity from 4 to 5.5 tons per hectare in favorable areas, not in unfavorable areas. In favorable areas, then you need only 36 million hectares. So that means from 44, it can be reduced to 36 million hectare. That means around 7 to 8 million hectare unfavorable rice area can be shifted to alternatives, whether oilseed, pearls, horticulture, or whatever it is. We have come out with a good publication, and I would be very, very happy to give all of you a copy of this one, that eco-regional rice farming for enhancing productivity, profitability, and sustainability. And this gives a detailed analysis, step by step, how it can be done, how it can be achieved, and what is going to be its impact economically and environmentally. Now the question is, can this productivity, which is currently 4, be increased to 5.5. It can be because there is large yield gap of rice. If you see this particular analysis, which we did sometimes back, our yield gap varies from 45 to 60%. So if we can narrow down this yield gap, it is very much possible to increase the productivity and left out some of the rice areas. Of course, for second one, which we call as adaptation and also alleviation, we need to go for several technologies. My subsequent speakers will be talking much in details about those technologies, but just to touch upon, we have got very good varieties which are tolerant to different stresses. For example, these two varieties which were released last year from NRI Cuttack, Sherdan 801, Sherdan 802, these two varieties are tolerant to submergence as well as drought at the same time. And also they can tolerate some of the biotic stresses. Not only these two examples, nowadays there are several other varieties coming. And then there are several natural resource management technologies, whether it is efficient water management, soil health card and site-specific nutrient management, neem-coated urea, leaf color chart, microbial formulations, integrated nutrient management, conservation agriculture, and so on. All of these technologies are now available, which will help not only in enhancing productivity, but also reduce the input use by increasing the use efficiency of all those inputs. But then at the end of the day, we need to integrate all of these things. So whenever we say that we need to enhance the sustainability of rice farming, we should not be dealing with only one, starting with variety, of course, soil and fertilizer management, water and agronomy, farming system, and then this policy. And these policies should start from the crop planning. For example, rice, eco-regional example I just gave, similar thing can be done for other crops also. So all of these things we put together to make Indian rice farming sustainable. So therefore, friends, let me conclude with these few points. Number one is abiotic stresses are intensifying with climate change and natural resource degradation. And stresses are more whenever we grow rice in unfavorable agroecosystems. To make rice farming stress tolerant, we need to start from eco-regional planning to integration of all the technologies. And then of course, for this, it is not a very simple task, not a very easy task. For that, we need institutions to be reshaped towards sustainable rice farming. And of course, it requires significant financial and institutional investment. Yesterday, several times this particular investment aspect came again and again. And of course, besides this, we also need a good policy for procurement, processing, pricing, and promotion of all of these technologies to make rice farming sustainable in India. So with this, I conclude my presentation, and thank you very much for giving me a patient hearing. Thank you, Dr. Chaudhary. Thank you, Dr. Sharma, for wonderful opportunity which you have given to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You are in well in time, and you saved roughly 2.5 minutes for us. And now I open the presentation for discussion. So we can have 5 to 7 minutes discussion here before moving further. So I would like to get the questions on the floor. Please.
So those who are interested to raise the questions, they should flag it so they can be easily identified.
So one way, this is the directly you can raise your question right on this platform. Otherwise, if you are shy, you can send your questions writing in the chat box.
Yeah, or maybe at the end we can take all of this.
And also we'll have time for that. अगर किसी का question है तो भी just. I think it is peace everywhere. Dr. Sharma ji, would you like to speak? Yeah. Please. Sharma ji, your voice is not very clear.
Can I make a comment at this stage, or should I wait to take it in?
Unable to hear you properly. I think the volume level is too weak.
Dr. Saab is asking, he should ask it now or maybe at the end. That is his question.
No, you ask right now so that ice breaks.
I don't know, actually, I tried to check it before the start of the session, whether my sound is clear or not, but I was told that it is audible. I don't know whether it is clear to you or not. Are you able to listen to me?
Not very well. Not very well.
Dr. Saab, I can hear you, so probably I can pass on the message.
Okay, just a brief comment I want to make. Dr. Pastor, very good presentation. I was impressed by your clear and visionary presentation. The point which you make yesterday also and today also forcefully you said in your presentation that rice area needs to be reduced. Say from 44 to say 40 or 36 million hectares, and then we have to avoid growing rice in the unfavorable situation. So this we have been hearing for the last, I think, several decades. And you may remember that the National Commission of Agriculture in 1976 also recommended that we should stop growing rice in the rain-fed uplands because it is not economical, productivity is very poor. But then instead of reducing the area over the years, we are rather increasing the area. Only in the last 5-7 years it is constant. Now, I think yesterday also in the night you must have heard a comment from the chairman or the CEO of the NITI Aayog that in a democratic country like India, it is very difficult to implement hard decisions. So these things are there. Do you think that it is possible in the near future that we are able to reduce rice area under the unfavorable ecology? Very difficult to implement these decisions in a country like ours. I think the economic considerations are more important than anything else. This is just a brief comment that I want to make at this stage.
Yeah. Yes, it is not easy. It is really not easy. And as you remember, yesterday, the data was not data, but some concern was made that now rice is being promoted in the area very unsuitable. In the areas of Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh and even Madhya Pradesh, where water is a major concern, but even then rice is being promoted. And you know very well why farmers go for this particular crop. But the problem is, as I said, that if we continue doing it and if we go on depleting the natural resources, the point will come which will take us to a point of nowhere. We will not be able to sustain it. If for even Punjab, as you know that the huge subsidy which we give, the day government thinks or the day consumer thinks that this amount of subsidy is more
Sir, you are not audible, sir.
Am I audible now?
Now audible.
Yeah, there is little problem in your audio.
Oh, okay.
Not only today, as usual also there is a problem
Achha.
with the connectivity of audio.
Is it audible now?
Yeah, it is perfect.
Okay. So the problem is as we go on growing rice in these unfavorable situations, actually we are simply eating out within the natural resource base, which will not be continued after some time. But this is, I would say, a right time when lots of policy changes are happening. If we can really make a plan, not only for rice, for other crops, also concentrate there and take an overall of the whole agriculture system in the country, I think it is possible. Otherwise, farmers themselves will at one point of time will come to realize that it is not going to be viable, not going to be sustainable. But of course, by immediately within 1 or 2 years, it will happen. No, that is not going to happen.
Okay, thank you very much. Rest of the things we will see at the end. And now we'll move to the next presentation. Another colleague from National Academy of Agriculture Research Management.
Sir, audio is not available, sir.
Pardon? Muhibi Azam.
Audio
do you have any problem?
Audio not hearing.
I think problem is there with your set. To me, it appears everything is okay this side.
Could you available?
Yeah, I think it's okay.
We are listening. We are listening, Dr. Chaudhary. We are listening you.
Yeah. So another colleague we have, Dr. C.S. Srinivas Rao, who is presently the director of National Academy of Agriculture Research Management, Hyderabad, the well-known institute. Before that, he led the Central Research Institute for Dryland Agriculture and also coordinated the AICRP on dryland agriculture. And he is a very well-known figure in the area of sustainable soil management, sustainable agriculture, climate change research, and conservation agriculture. Today, he'll be talking on conservation agriculture in rice-based systems. I would not go into the awards and the kind of biodata and everything, because these figures and these faces are well known to everyone in India at present. And straightway, Dr. C.H. Nivasrao, I would like to request you to make your presentation. Again, time limit is 20 minutes, and then subsequently open for discussion. Please start.
Thank you, Dr. Chaudhary, and I'm trying to make in a slideshow.
Slides are visible, only make it show.
Yeah, somehow I'm missing that option. Yes. Just hold on.
Yeah, this is the option.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chaudhary, and also Sharma ji, and also co-speakers Himanshu, Mandal Saab, and maybe Dr. Pete will be joining. So I'll be speaking next 20 minutes on conservation agriculture practices in rice-based system, and what are the challenges, and what are the opportunities. And of course, I put that rice in India is alive. In fact, everybody would like to eat, and not only in India, many countries. And we have different forms of rice, and eating our food habits are directly or indirectly related to rice towards food security or nutrition and health. But at the same time, rice crop, we would like to see that, as Himanshu was telling, that water depletion and climate change. Whenever we speak about groundwater depletion and climate change, rice crop comes into the picture because of water depletion and also methane and other GHG emissions. These are the two kinds of rice coin in India and many countries. It is not only in India, it's rice growing. More or less, China and rice, India is growing, but many parts of India are growing rice. So little bit less, but rice is grown major, little or more in every part of the world. And I would like to. I would like to see that one of the concern when resource conservations are looked into, I want to put the map of where the rice, especially, of course, in previous presentation, Kharif, Rabi, and summer rice growing regions are seen. But if I put Kharif rice left side and water availability, water stress in right side, left and right side, you can imagine that if you see the overlapping of this rice growing and water stress, you see that Punjab, Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh, Bundelkhand region, and some parts of West Bengal, and many other regions. So this underlines this why we have to utilize water, and what are the water saving technologies are essential. If we make over groundwater, some of the regions, even groundwater is used for rice production system. You see that India has 17% of population, but 4% of water resources. And rice is consumed, in fact, as it was told that 30% of water, 1/3 of water is consumed by rice crop. And you can see the groundwater depletion map of India. In fact, it is highest among the in the world. So these are some of the challenges I would like to draw your attention that where and water is available, where rice crop is grown. And also second option, I would like to put that what are the soil fertility. And soils are very, very important for bringing. The average rain 4 tons now per hectare. We want to improve. Earlier it was 2 tons per hectare. Now it is 4 tons per hectare. But we want to improve that even typical suitable areas that you can see that what is the phosphorus and potassium fertility. Left side phosphorus and right side potassium. You can imagine that both the things are deficient and medium levels. And we are depleting these nutrients continuously, then see that sustainability and issues are coming in India. Then we are, of course, there is a success story of rice production. In 1960, we have 38 million tons of rice. In 2019, we have touched almost 118 million tons of rice production. But at what cost? And we were not having same water, and we were not having same soil quality, and we were not having same environment and biodiversity, soil and above biodiversity and forest, thick forest somewhere. Of course, that is not related to, but somewhere paddy areas, forest areas have been, some of the regions are shifted towards paddy. Then when one side we want more rice is a stable food and we want sustainable rice production, but there are food security challenges. When productivity is increasing, certainly a scarcity of energy and farm mechanization or labor energy, nutrient scarcity, water and scarcity is a very, very thing which may be pushing the rice production down. And above that, climate change. In fact, yesterday I was speaking that traditional rice growing regions of Kerala, Northeast regions and Eastern India, rainfall is, average rainfall is declining 20 to 30% in some areas. Though immediately they are not causing the negatively rice production, but in future that a trend comes that some of the regions mid-season droughts and these things are happening. So water, nutrient, energy and climate, these are the important issues. And above that, fertilizer use efficiency is falling down. These are the important challenges, so that when we want to improve the rice production systems, we want to see the sustainability of rice production, and natural resources are very, very critical. Therefore, conservation of natural resources for sustainable rice production in India and elsewhere is a very, very critical. And what are the natural resources we have to conserve? Of course, land and soil, of course, water, and we want to see the biodiversity. We want to keep our climate is as much as low, and also wanted to see that forest, so that climate, forest and water and all are interrelated. So how resource conservation technologies or conservation agriculture system will contribute to all these natural resources, I will take few examples. Very often we speak about conservation agriculture. In fact, originally conservation agriculture came, it is to maintain the sustainability of rain-fed production system. But we have been working in India and in rain-fed system. In fact, so many problems in conservation agriculture system. When we don't, many major soils in rain-fed systems are surface crust. If we don't want to till that first and second and third rainfall, we want to saturate with rainwater, soil with rainwater. So when there is no tillage, runoff is going on. When runoff is taken place, top fertile soil, nutrient, carbon and everything resources are going on. So there is a paradox situation really where conservation agriculture can be utilized, even if we typical Punjab, Haryana, Western UP. Though we speak about conservation agriculture system as a system based by principles of crop diversification, minimum soil tillage, and residue cover. So we have to see that when rice weed systems are happening, and in some cases, okay, after rice crop and we are going for wheat, one crop we are making this tillage reduction and relay cropping, but afterwards in an entire year we are making tillage. So then whatever benefits accrued by conservation agriculture systems in IGP, then by tillage, you know, the tropical environment, it is going off. So the problem is that what is the conservation agriculture and resource conservation technologies are where these things are possible. I have put that conservation agriculture with the minimum tillage, crop residue cover, and legume in rotation are sequence one side, and another side resource conservation technology like water conservation, soil fertility, soil biota, carbon footprint, climate protection, combination of all of these things. Typically, we would like to see in India, because our farm is a very small holding and a very, very slopey land, shallow soils, and even in rice production system, taking from Kerala to our Assam and this side to Punjab, the resources are not uniform. So that typically, if you want to go for a conservation agriculture, there is we may be having limitations in really implementation at farmers level. And wherever conservation agriculture is possible, we can go. Otherwise, what are the best resource conservation or combination of technologies can be possible towards resources? The overall objective is to conserve the water, to conserve the soil, to conserve the biodiversity, to conserve the carbon and fertility. That is overall mission of the conservation agriculture, what we understand. As it is seen that rice growing ecologies, and you can see the precipitation index. We have different types of, from shifting cultivation to flood prone regions. In fact, in Kerala, in previous Himanshu was telling, but you can see that which are the regions really, as he was indicating, that precipitation index cumulative for the period of, for example, I have taken 2017 and 18, which are the really suitable. And some of the areas they claim that this year rice productivity is very good because of some reasons, water resources. But as really it is sustainable. And if it is not sustainable after 3 years, 4 years, who has to be planned? Who has to be answered? In fact, that is the why that the question of sustainable rice systems, what we wanted to speak, which are the areas and which are the suitable areas. I wanted to see that different areas, very suitable, highly suitable, which it was presented in earlier, wherever it is there. But a farmer immediately, if we want to reduce, diversify from rice to maize crop, because in previous few years back, lot of investment was done in Punjab to diversify rice towards maize. But it has not taken place. That it has taken partially, but when money was not given in subsequent year, again it has come back. So issue is that whether immediate action, perhaps orientation towards our rice production system is rice saving systems. I take this example 2015, where monsoon, we can see that many areas of Punjab, Haryana, UP, and some parts of Northeast and regions where in Telangana, rainfall was deficient. But we are growing rice. We are mining, in fact, depleting water resources. Certainly, we have to push up this aerobic rice, half of the amount of water. More than a double in aerobic rice over transplanted rice, intermittent irrigation systems. But these technologies, what is required really to implement these technologies? Though technologies are available, and but how to implement? Another important technology is soil conservation. We know that in conservation agriculture, the soil to be covered, minimum disturbance, crops should be protected, and increase the biodiversity and keep living roots in the soil, integrate livestock system, agroforestry, and harness the soil water nutrient interactions. But you know that how much, in fact, more than 100 million tons of crop residue is being burned. I tell you, even I will add another 50 million tons of crop residue. We have to account a lot of horticulture crop residues, fruit waste, vegetable waste, fruit waste, and flower waste is being burned. So how we have to see that crop residue in overall circular carbon economy in India? And now many policies are coming towards making that residue to the energy, and energy, whatever byproduct is there, that we can it can go back to the soil. So with that, farmer get more benefits, more income. Then only I think then only farmer will see the opportunity for crop residue management in really practical sense. And as a scientist, we tell crop residue should go for fodder in the soil and it should not be burned. But not only residue, many other crops are being burned. But our endeavor should keep on going, that there are many success stories for last 2-3 years in Punjab, Haryana, especially Atari, Dr. Rajveer Singh and other people have done. In fact, in Nikra villages, the 100% crop residue reduction was there. But we have to see that sustainable and how to implement these practices in long term so that overall sustainable rice production systems are possible. If we want to improve that biodiversity conservation in soil, we want to improve the surface biodiversity. Of course, conservation agriculture contributes by diverse crop covers, various crops, and diverse crop rotations, and integrate farming system. That surface biodiversity, above surface soil biodiversity will also contribute to soil biodiversity. But issues are there when we are making crop residue burning. You can see here that crop residue burn field in Uttar Pradesh. Surface cover, when we are telling that very, very critically important to reduce, to conserve soil, to conserve carbon, to conserve fertility and microbes, biological health. So this is the reality, and see that how our policies and enabling implementation programs see that year to year, at least century by century. And as Imanshu was telling that hitherto we have been discussing about crop residue burning only Punjab, Haryana and Western UP. In fact, everywhere crop residue burning is happening. Not only rice, but other crops. In fact, it is come to even deeper parts of southern India. Everywhere crop residue is burning. So we need to have holistic these things, policy and program. And when typically it is an example of Bastar in Chhattisgarh, and only paddy systems, rice-based system, if we introduce under integrated farming system, the soil cover is improved, and also diversity of above soil is improved, livelihoods are improved, carbon footprint is improved, so that it has become sustainable. And also, but there are these integrated farming system models are very, very location specific, and it also can improve the carbon buildup in the soil. And Professor Ratanlal computed that if we improve the 1 or 2% carbon in the root zone, in fact, we can extend, there is a possibility of rice production up to 1 ton. So that is the way where different kinds of technology can contribute to vertical productivity and then the horizontal productivity. Vertical productivity can be enhanced by several resource conservation technologies. And this is the one of the slide by Himanshu, that by practicing that different varieties and different water management, not only our climate is conserved, and carbon dioxide are equivalent to these things with no nitrogen, urea and neem coated urea. Our government as India has come up very nicely that we are trying at least out of 31 million tons of urea, we are expecting now around 27 million tons of urea. And of course, we have to have intensified so that neem can be captured across the country, which is available in the country, so that we have to move a total holistic neem coated urea in India. And another important resource conservation technologies in Vishwanath Cheriali in Assam, and in typical rice-based system, when we went for integrated farming system, by putting local resources, conserving the vermicompost, crop residue, when we introduced other components, in fact, productivity and profitability, overall income is increased to the farmers in Assam. Then only when income is not seen, implementation is difficult in resource conservation technology. So per unit land use, how we can see the productivity. This is another in Sonitpur, North Lakhimpur district, in bordering to Assam and Arunachal Pradesh, and relay cropping. After rice crop, you can see that when we introduce a legume crop and water is conserved, and we have got additional income in terms of legume, and legume consumption has increased. And also another important technology in Assam, and this practice is seen in Kuttanad region in Kerala also. Residue is open that, and animals are fed. The thin portion of crop residue is eaten by the animal, and the soil is protected. So erosion is.
Dr. Rao,
yeah.
Dr. Rao, please expedite.
Yeah. And this is some of the residue retention, and this anyway whole practices. And we need to see that crop residue nutrient use efficiency also. Of course, I'll be telling that crop residues can contribute to nutrient loss, and each ton of crop residue leads to loss of 5.5 kgs, and sulfur and other nutrients we need to protect. And also how to utilize fertilizer and fertilizer saving by foliar application, and how to bring that biomass, and especially on-farm generation of biomass. And this is the advantage of rice intensification. All rice workers are known how water saving is up to the 20%. In Telangana, how that rice fields are reclaimed with different management. And different practices can contribute to nutrients, so that the saved nutrient, the expenditure on the saved nutrient can be diversified. And yesterday I was making presentation in FAI seminar. IFCO is coming with nano fertilizers, and we would like to see that nutrient losses. The point I would like to mention, Dr. Chaudhary, is that when now the extension way of these things are, instead of single technology, if we demonstrate technology packaging, the resource conservation technologies are possible. This is one of the program in tank silt, and for that really a policy, as Himanshu was telling, and research and technology implementation synergy is required. And we need to explain that one of the point I would like to, that resource conservation technologies need to start from education level, and we have to share with the policymakers. We have to keep discussing resource conservation, because RCTs are different from varieties. We have to keep sensitizing higher people. Community involvement is important, and district official interfaces are important. Then only it is possible. So the framework for resource conservation is, we have to start with R&D education and capacity building, community and policy, and a large scale implementation. The way forward is that certainly the CA, the conservation agriculture RCTs will improve the rice production, and they are location specific and critical for sustainable rice production. And R&D with enabling policy is critical for large scale implementation. In fact, we need a policy and rice production planning in India. Perhaps Himanshu and we all together, we can make these the presentations in terms of policy, so that it is possible where rice can be grown and to what extent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. C. Srinivasa Rao ji. Thank you so much. Please unshare your presentation. And at this moment, if any quick question is there, one can ask. Otherwise, we will move to next presentation. If not, then straightway I would like to invite another colleague, another wonderful colleague, Professor Bisupati Mandal from BCKV Mohanpur, with Vidhan Chandra Krishi Vishwavidyalaya, very well known university. And he is a reputed soil scientist, everybody knows him. Upkeeping health of intensively cultivated rice soils of India is the topic on which he will be deliberating his views today. Dr. Bisupati Mandal, a well-known name in the arena of soil science, natural resource management, as well as sustainable agriculture. His critical comments on soil health program, soil health management strategies, and micronutrient management in the soil, also overall sustainable soil management are very well known, and people consider his views very critical for development of many programs in the eastern region as well as at national level. Dr. Bisupati Mandal is now going to present, he is going to make his presentation on this topic. Dr. Mandal, please start. Again, you will have 20 minutes for presentation, and then we'll switch over for the question answers, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Chaudhary, Dr. Sharma, Himanshu, and Srinivasan Rao. You know, it's very difficult to say after Himanshu and Srinivasan says, because they are so comprehensive. And what I will be sharing with my short experience of working with rice soil, and I will be indicating, highlighting a couple of issues to ponder over, so that what Himanshu and Srinivasan pointed out, the deteriorating resource base of rice production. To say, I'm not very worried for, if you see the productivity of rice, as if there is no problem. There is Hindu growth rate, you know. I'm happy with that growth rate. If there is no deterioration in resource base, and this deterioration, this growth rate is achieved because of higher resources, and those leads to, in fact, if you see the growth of rice, currently we are doing, cultivating, more than 50% are of poor or very poor soil health. And you know this, that this is because of that, the partial factor productivity of fertilizer is going down day by day. And all these are captured. If you see the current level of publications, what Himanshu and Srinivasan have correctly pointed out, if you see the number of publications, there nowadays is more on environmental issues and related to ecology, particularly for rice. Now, if you see critically, what are the basic problem for growing rice so far soil is concerned? If you could find that, if you see the yield gap for both rice wheat, rainfed rice, and other things, a majority of this gap is attributed because of the poor soil constraint, or because of soil constraint, because of fertilizer constraint. In fact, 25% around yield gap is attributed both for, particularly for rice, is soil constraint. And if you see within soil constraint, you could find soil fertility, soil organic matter, nitrogen deficiency. They are the most significant one. Now we try to capture it still inside. And we have compiled the data set available in the country. So far the soil quality is concerned for rice, non-rice, and non-rice. You could find that rice, if your things is rice, then there is no much depletion in soil quality or soil health. vis-a-vis rice, non-rice, and non-rice. It means this alternate wetting and drying, submergence and no submergence under rice, non-rice, may be one of the reasons for not having our soil in good state. Now, we have also identified the major master parameter for this, and we could find that particularly for rice, non-rice system, where this soil quality is a bit lower than the other two counterparts, you could find that possibly it is the physical attributes, water stable aggregate and other things they contribute to, while non-rice system, their major constraint is around available nitrogen, while the rice based is basically a microbial origin. Now, we try to capture it still intrinsically. What we did, we studied the resilience of it. And what we did, we have a regime of soil quality, then we impose rehabilitation measures under different soil, different cropping system using this model, wherein we could find that because these insectisol, antisol, and alfisol are the major rice growing areas, and we could, through resilience study, we could categorize them under different category: zone of comfort, soil with where we can do our business very comfortably; zone of promise, even it degrades, it can bounce back; and zone of death. You could find that insectisol is both under zone of comfort and zone of death. But while alfisol, if you have good management and rehabilitation measure, it is always there under zone of profit and zone of comfort. While if you see the cropping system, you could find the rice potato system, because you know it involves so many treatments, so many combinations of treatment, then it's very difficult to address a number of cropping system. We could do it through two systems: rice potato system, very common, and rice, and we could find that rice potato system are more resilient against these stresses. Now, if you were to, why all these things, if you were to partition, because you know 96 million hectare of land is under one or the other form of degradations. And our Prime Minister made a commitment that by 2030, we could have around 26 million hectare rehabilitated. Now, it means there is scarce commodity of funds for rehabilitation measure. If we could partition, if we could group our soil on the basis of this soil quality, soil resilience, then we can capture the internal things, and we can partition the group so that we can prioritize our investment. Now, if you see in both the cases, possibly physical properties, soil organic carbon, what Dr. Srinivasan Rao has pointed out, they are the master indicator. Now, problem is, you know, carbon is a very, very scarce commodity. Now, where from this carbon comes? We made a calculations for available carbon in the country. Then we are convinced that external application of carbon is a no way solution. Then we try to see if we could do it, we could manage it in situ. Then we firstly try to have, we try to have the critical limit of carbon, so that you can schedule your treatment, that where from we can see that critical limit is for alfisol, it is around 0.7, and for insectisol and antisol, it is almost 0.9. You know, having this much of carbon in our soil is absolutely difficult. Can we really do something internal so that that amount of carbon is there and we can have upgraded, upkept soils? Now, we studied this and we could find that if your system is rice upland and upland, then you could find that under rice, you know, we at least 1/3 of the crop, what 1/3 of the photosynthetic carbon is allocated to the hidden half. And out of that, very little gets converted to soil organic carbon. And if you see rice system, they convert a lion's share of the carbon allocated in the hidden half. Then it means rice system can always can keep a higher amount of carbon, and that could be facilitated if you add carbon externally. It means conversion of crop residue carbon to soil organic carbon is facilitated if you do apply organic amendment from outside. Now, if we could critically analyze the how much organic carbon, is it 5 ton, is it 10 ton, or it is 15 ton? If we could know the critical amount, say if it comes to 2 ton per hectare, then with 10 ton we can cover 5 hectare. This way, by knowing this, we can use more effectively our organic residue, organic amendment for accruing a higher amount of carbon in soils. We capture, 4 per milli concept, you all know. And we could see that in India, could we do that? Could we achieve 4 per milli to upkeep our soil health, particularly rice-based cropping system? You could find that if we do our cultivation through balanced nutrition, because we have a good soil health scheme in this country on, and if we could do our cultivation NPK plus organic, we could achieve 4 per milli around 10 if we use 10%, and if we use organic, we could have 40, particularly for rice base. But for non-rice, it's very difficult, and we could land up only 6 to 9%, not more than that. This is mainly because if you see our carbon saturation deficit in our soils, we measured it is just around 0.3, 0.4. It means if your soil is having 0.5, you cannot have more than 0.4, 0.8. Then in this case, we advocate that building carbon possibly could not be done. It is better to have manage what we are doing, manage carbon. What we are doing in case of acid soil amelioration, we hardly say acid soil amelioration. We say do management of acid soil. Automatically for carbon management, our concept of aggregating carbon in soil may not be a possible option, but management of carbon is possibly a better option than the other. Now, I have shown you that possibly for rice, non-rice system, say soya, rice and wheat, rice and maize system, I have shown you that one of the major constraint is physical constraint. Now, people are nowadays talking about saying goodbye to paddling. Can we do that? We have shown through this graph that yes, we can do, but in that case, you have to do it on the basis of soil structural classes. You could find that if your soil structural classes a bit heavy, then possibly you can withdraw, you can cease paddling operation. This is nowadays this is nowadays proved through conservation agriculture. And if you see the economics, initially there may be an economic disadvantage, but if you run the system for long, you could find that it is not that problem. Now, if this could only be done, rice withdrawal of furling could only be done if you do apply some crop residue organic. Because if you see, we did this, we try to prove this using long-term experiment, wherein you can see that under rice system, a good part of both nitrogen and carbon, they are going to the non-oxidizable form, which in fact impart the resilience of rice system. Even if you see, if you go on doing rice system, drop in soil health, soil quality is not that great vis-a-vis a system with rice, wheat or rice maize. Now, if we want to really, what Himanshu try to emphasize that if we want to have level intensification, at the same time, we want to have low environmental impact under all these rice, non-rice system, we got to do this business using all sorts of variant in conventional conservation, organic farming. Then we should try to see using other a number of components, whether they are really resilient or not. Problem is, we are studying this for 5 years, 10 years. Then we are telling that they are sustainable. But problem is, this rice, wheat, they are there for almost centuries together. If not centuries together, at least for the last 50 years, with the introduction of high-yielding varieties and other things. Now we are saying they are not sustainable. But the way we are currently doing, running an experiment for 5 years and saying that it is sustainable. Very recently, there is a publication that to say this sort of sustainable or non-sustainable, we have to run the show at least around 20 years. Then if we want to shift from this to that, then automatically we must have a number of variant in it and also run the show for a longer years for promotions. Now, besides this, rice soil is now under stress from other things, what we call secondary problem. You know, Bengal Delta, there is problem of arsenic, and with days, this is increasing. A high amount of arsenic is being deposited, and what we have done, the arsenic remediation measure is really very costly. That's why we try to win over this following selections of good cultivars. And we could see that these cultivars, they have different mechanism to eliminate all these toxicant, and we could prove that your Shatabdi and Swarno Sab one, they are win-win-one. And in each stages of their, what we could do, we could highlight the pathways of mechanisms for elimination of arsenic, and we could prove that possibly selection of variety is a better option then. Then we could come across a peculiar problem. You know, from 1960s to 2000, we have released a number of mustard cultivars, both for rice and wheat. Here, the result is for rice, wherein you could find that we are losing grain concentration of zinc and iron. And if you see, if we do apply to alleviate zinc or iron deficiency with their application, there is again an antagonistic effect. I don't know how this this problem could be win over, possibly while releasing variety. While releasing varieties, nobody, even I could not have any data. I mean IONOM data for releasing varieties. You are releasing rice variety on the basis of their stress tolerance. But at the same time, you are not telling whether they are in terms of quality, in terms of rich in ionoms or not. These things, these are secondary development, and these are to be carved. If we could carve and we could see our problem with this angle, possibly we can keep our rice-based system or rice system still lively for centuries together. With this, I thank you very much for kindly inviting me to share my experience in upkeeping health of rice soils and what are the major problems for rectifying the problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bisubati Mandal. You were exactly on time, and secondly, it was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. We can open this for discussion. If anybody is interested.
Dr. Chaudhary, there are some questions in the chat box, but maybe at the end of all presentations, we can take some of those.
Yeah. That I have seen. A few questions are there. Then we will straightway move to the next presentation so that we end up on time. And next, we have a keynote speaker, Dr. Pete Smith, who is a chair in Plant and Soil Science, Institute of Biological and Environmental Sciences, University of Aberdeen, UK. Dr. Pete Smith will be talking on rice for food, nutritional, and environmental security. So, Dr. Pete, please start your presentation.
Thank you very much. Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, thank you. Right, so I'd like to thank my co-authors, Nuda Fitton, Yang Guo, Matthias Kunert, Dali Nayak, Martin Nikolaisen, Ziyin Yang, and Junyi Wang. I'm going to be talking today about food and nutrition and environmental security provided by rice. So rice is really important for food and nutrition. It's cultivated in 113 countries. It's the staple food of over half of the world's population. It provides 27% of energy supply and 20% of dietary protein intake in the developing world. And rice cultivation is the principal activity and source of income for about 100 million households in Asia and Africa. So it's really important, particularly in South Asia, East Asia, and Southeast Asia, but also in Africa and South America, in Brazil in particular. If we look at the rice consumption worldwide, China dominates with the largest consumption of rice, but it's closely followed by India. And that with other South Asian and East Asian countries shown coming up after India, with Brazil the only country on there that's not from Asia. But a really significant contribution. It makes a really significant contribute to diets in India and China in particular. When we look at the contribution that it makes to daily uptake in terms of protein, energy, and fat, we can see that it provides over 50% of the energy intake in a range of countries, 50% of the protein intake in a range of countries, and up to 15% of the fat in a range of countries. So it's not only important in terms of volume consumed, but it's also important for the nutrition of people, particularly in these rice rice intensive countries. And if we look at production, we can see that it's the third most important cereal in the world, behind corn and wheat in terms of volume. Milled rice comes in next, ahead of barley, sorghum, oats and rice. And if we look about the land impact, we look where it's grown. This map just shows the areas where rice is particularly prevalent. And you can see that South Asia, India in particular, East Asia, particularly China and Japan, and associated countries, and Southeast Asia are the countries where it really dominates. But we also have some production in West Africa and in South America, and a little in North America and Europe. It really provides a range of positive and some negative impacts. So the factors that influence this are to do with agricultural influences, which influence the protein, the potassium, and the arsenic, which is a negative impact in rice. And there are some post-harvest influences to do with milling, storage and cooking, which change the amount of iron, zinc and protein provided by rice nutritionally. By processing, if you take brown rice and you process it into white rice, you tend to lose iron and zinc. So it's recommended that rice is fortified to make enriched white rice, and the enrichment takes place, the fortification, with iron, folic acid and vitamin A. And you can see from this map, the fortification is applied all over the world, and it's quite significant, particularly in China and India. One of the downsides of rice is that in some countries there can be rice can have inorganic arsenic. An example here is from Bangladesh, where the arsenic is from and it's from a natural source. It gets mobilized into the groundwater, and it can contribute to a daily intake. And it's estimated that about 80% of arsenic contaminated land is used for agriculture. So it's a significant issue in some countries where consumption of rice is particularly prevalent. The arsenic poisoning can be a downside of rice. Let's now look at the impacts of rice on the environment. So firstly, we should say that ecosystem services provided by rice can be significant. So this study by Amaresh Nayak, I know he's on the call, so you'll recognize this slide, Amaresh, looks at the ecosystem services that are provided by rice. You can see that these can be broken down into regulating services, provisioning services, supporting services. So particular control of pests and carbon, soil erosion and nitrogen fixation, food and byproducts in terms of provisioning services, and the supporting services, soil fertility, hydrology, nutrient cycling and soil formation. If we couple together all of these ecosystems provided by rice, they can provide ecosystem services worth up to over $1,000 per hectare per year. But of course, we don't normally value these ecosystem services, but we should do. And by including the provision of these ecosystem services, it makes rice even more important. So the food provision obviously is the most valuable service, but it also provides a vital service in carbon flows and soil erosion in particular, which can be negatively impacted. So in India, the values vary by agroclimatic zones, and it's recommended that payments linked to ecosystem service are introduced to reduce income gaps. Moving on, we can see that in Bangladesh in particular, rice contributes to a number of sustainability indices of sustainable development. So there are the social, economic, and environmental pillars of sustainability that are contributed to by rice. And you can see that the contribution to these various pillars of sustainability varies between the type of production, between irrigated, rain-fed lowland or upland rice, flood-prone, saline-prone, and there's a mean value shown here. But again, contributing significantly to the social, environmental, and economic pillars of sustainability. One of the most important constraints on rice production and one of the most important environmental impacts is water use. Irrigated rice is most common, followed by rain-fed lowland rice. Upland rice is predominant in Central and South America, but you can see from this map we have most of the irrigated rice occurring in Central Asia, South Asia, East Asia, and Southeast Asia, tending to have upland rice in Africa and South America, and some other production systems dotted around the world. But it's a significant impact on water use. Here we can see that it's important, particularly for providing sustainable rural livelihoods, particularly in India and Southeast Asia. So this is the balance shown here between irrigated and rain-fed rice, with a rain-fed rice shown in red and the irrigated rice shown in green. And you can see that the balance, it differs between countries. This amounts to about 140 million households in Asia and 20 million households in Africa. And rain-fed rice predominates areas with the greatest poverty. So where you get the greatest amount of poverty, you tend to get rain-fed rice. If we look at the water use by rice, it's significant, with the highest water use per ton of rice produced in Pakistan and India. And this is important because the water footprint often occurs in countries which have water shortage for some periods of the year. So it's a significant impact on water that can be used for other services. The national footprint of rice production, unsurprisingly, is dominated by China and India. China and India alone account for nearly 2/3 of the water that's used in rice production. And you can show here, it's shown in millions of cubic meters per year. So really significant impacts in China. But the largest single water used for rice production is actually in India. The other important impact is in terms of greenhouse gases. We can measure greenhouse gases in a number of ways. We can use eddy covariance. For example, these are the FluxNet sites which measure methane around the world, shown here. Here's some examples for Asia Flux, and this is a site in Delhi. And here's another one in China Flux Station. And you can also measure emissions with manual chambers and automatic chambers in various systems. But by measuring the greenhouse gases, we can keep a tab on the emissions of methane and nitrous oxide in particular from rice. Here are some examples. One of my students, Yang Guo, is working on modeling emissions of methane. These are some examples here using the DayCent model to model greenhouse gas emissions. And the measurements are shown in black dots, and the modeled estimates are shown in red. And you can see that we get a fairly good fit with the model in predicting the methane emissions at these particular sites. When we plot them out, it's another way of looking at it. We've got the observed versus the simulated daily measurements, and you can see that we get a reasonable fit some outliers, but we get a reasonable fit. So the models are doing quite a good job in simulating those methane fluxes. And here's an example of the N2O fluxes where the models do less well. Again, the measurements are shown in black and the simulations are shown in red. And you can see there's a significant overprediction here of nitrous oxide fluxes. So it shows that the models are working less well for nitrous oxide than they do for methane. We can use the emissions of methane to calculate emission factors, and these are used to work out the emissions from rice on larger areas. So here we're looking at the methane emission factor as affected by the growing season water regime, and here by the pre-season water drainage. So flooded rice or continuous flooding systems have the highest emissions, mid-season drainage or alternative wet and drying have the lowest. So going short drainage, long drainage to two drainage systems significantly reduces the emission factor. But you can see that there's a significant variation between countries, with South Korea here having the highest emissions, going through to the Philippines with the lowest emissions according to these emission factors. At the regional scale, it also varies, but we can see that in terms of total emissions, methane emissions in teragrams for the whole world come to about 23 teragrams of methane emissions. This is for the year 2000, with Asia dominating those emissions. So Asia is a really significant emitter of methane. So it's clear that one of the missions for rice researchers around the world is to maintain yields whilst reducing water use and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, particularly methane. And that's particularly important in India, where emissions are large. Another issue is that synthetic fertilizer use by rice is significant. It accounts for about 70% of all rice, of all fertilizer that's applied to crops. And you can see that the application rates here, shown in red, are really high, particularly in India and China. So that, again, these two rice producing countries have significantly high levels of fertilizer applications, which lead to high levels of nitrous oxide emissions. So you can see that the nitrous oxide emission hotspots, again, India and China and other South Asian and Southeast Asian and South Asian countries shows significant hotspot for nitrous oxide emissions. So this is another thing that needs to be considered when looking at mitigation, and I'll come on to mitigation now. So given that there are these large methane emissions and large nitrous oxide emissions from rice, we have to find ways to mitigate them or to reduce those emissions. A number of estimates have been made of the mitigation potential for rice. This just shows a number of studies which estimate the mitigation potential, and it ranges from somewhere around 500 to 900 megatons of CO2 equivalents per year that could be reduced by various measures. I'll come on to that, what those measures are in a moment. Alternate flooding and drainage has a really significant potential to reduce methane emissions, maybe up to 60% of methane emissions. Direct wet seeding, some of these other methods such as composting and replacing urea with ammonium sulfate, and some are quite cheap as well. So the resulting costs are only $1 to $15 per ton of CO2 equivalent for replacing urea with ammonium sulfate, going up to quite high costs associated with alternative wetting and drainage. But we can calculate these, and we can calculate the marginal abatement cost curve. So that's to say, how much greenhouse gas can we reduce at a given cost? So we can work out the costs and benefits of those methane emission reductions. When we look at all of these together, this was an analysis for rice by Dali Nayak and colleagues. We see that a number of these mitigation options, for example, conservation tillage and inhibitors, intermittent irrigation with livestock manure, biochar, give us positive impacts that reduces the greenhouse gas emissions. Some that have been proposed to increase soil organic matter, for example, green manure, livestock manure and straw application, can on balance increase greenhouse gas emissions because although they increase the soil organic carbon content, they can actually increase the methane and nitrous oxide emissions. So when we combine that in terms of the total climate forcing, these can have negative impacts. But there are a number of mitigation options here that work in Chinese systems. So largely moving away from continuous flooding to intermittent flooding or alternate wet and drying, and these other combined systems have significant potential as well. If we look at the greenhouse gas emissions, we have to make sure that we don't have a negative impact on yield. So this is a study by Ziyin Shang, which is looking at a range of interventions. For example, no-till versus conventional tillage, straw return versus removal, and the replacement of mineral fertilizer with organic nitrogen. And what she shows here is that we get a positive impact of water saving, a positive impact of changing to organic fertilizers from mineral fertilizers, and the majority of these are important for reducing methane emissions and nitrous oxide emissions, but also maintaining yield. So it shows that we can reduce emissions while still maintaining yield or even increasing yield, and we don't have to trade off those two things. So we can have both increased productivity and reduced emissions if we change our management intelligently. Another example is from Bangladesh. This was from a PhD student, Khadija Begum, working in Bangladesh, and she looked at the soil carbon changes and the greenhouse gas changes, and she found that alternative wet and drying, reducing tillage, residue removal by only 15%, and replacing some of the fertilizer with cow dung was important for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and for improving soil carbon. And in fact, this is shown here. So this is alternate wet and drying. This is reduced tillage. This is the use of cow dung. It decreases emissions from the soil or increases the soil organic matter, but it increases the methane emissions too. But the overall balance is a net positive effect on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And here the integrated management is showing the largest benefits. The last thing I'd like to talk about is the impact of neem-coated urea. So we find that if we use neem, and neem-coated urea, we can get an 11% increase in yield, a 7% reduction in methane emissions, and a 25% reduction in nitrous oxide emissions. So the use of neem-coated urea, particularly in India, will be effective in increasing yield and in reducing all of greenhouse gas emissions. So in conclusion, rice is important globally as a food and as a crop for supporting rural livelihoods and also for providing food to millions and millions of people. It's important for nutritional security. Rice production systems can provide a range of ecosystem services. But on the other hand, rice uses a lot of water and it produces a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So the challenge for rice production research in the future is to find ways to reduce water use and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions whilst maintaining productivity and improving yield. So I'd just like to finish by saying, rice researchers, keep up your good work. Your work is really important, working on this really important crop to improve the sustainability and to improve nutrition security in the world. So thank you very much. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Pete, for the excellent presentation you made. And you have made wonderful statements supported with good quality research data. Now, I would like to request the conveners to take up the questions which are there in chat box. Just call one by one. If you call presentation wise, it would be nice. Otherwise, also randomly you can call, and our lead speaker and keynote speaker can reply to them. Dr. Gadanayak, Dr. A.K. Nayak.
Yeah, sir, just I am picking up some questions from chat box. So one of the question is Dr. Mahendra Kumar. So he says everyone talks about reducing the rice area. How it is possible? Rice area double in Telangana due to irrigation facility created of late. So these kind of things, the questions are coming. So we are suggesting certain areas should avoid rice cultivation. What is the alternative for farmers, socially and economically acceptable for those areas? Those kind of suggestions. I think any of our speakers, they can pick up this question. Dr. Srinivas Rao or Dr. Pathak Saab, they can take these questions.
Okay, I think
Please.
I may start and then Dr. Srinivas can add if he wants. Yes, wherever you are going to create irrigation facility and you provide irrigation free of cost, then certainly I shall use that water the way I want. But if there is limitation and if there is cost associated, then certainly I shall try to use that water as efficiently, as economically as possible. Now, somehow that has become a dichotomy in our whole policy framework. Even the water-starved regions also, we are trying to provide irrigation. That's fine. Irrigation is required. Irrigation, without irrigation, agriculture cannot be sustainable, cannot be profitable. But our objective is to utilize that water in the most economic and profitable way. And there are many other crops where water can be used to have higher benefit, higher income. So probably that is where policy intervention and of course some kind of awareness is required. And number two, as the second part which you are telling that why and how it will be then changed. No, it is not going to change overnight, as I said in the beginning. It will really take some time, and some, not only from the policy makers, but farmers also need to realize what is going to happen in the long term. And probably that understanding is now slowly coming, and they are also getting aware and aware day by day. But it is not a solution of 1 year or 2.
Yeah. Anything you want to add, Dr. CH?
Yeah, Dr. Mahendra, thank you for the question. In fact, rice area is doubled in Telangana, but as a rice scientist and ACRIP you have been working, we have to see that whether in light textured soils and also where from this irrigation area is been expanded. It is based on rain dependent rivers. If rain doesn't come in Maharashtra, the water bodies will be loaded with less water in Krishna Godavari. So whether it is a sustainable, so that is the two issues we want to flag it. Second thing you asked that if rice is reduced, what are the other crops? In fact, Telangana is a seed for high value crops. And pulse and oil seed, cut flowers and other horticulture products and crop diversification is possible in Telangana. Perhaps it may not be possible in overnight, but our focus and our contributions should lead slowly to the crop diversification. Thank
you. We can take another questions. Dr. Manjusa, he is asking that reducing yield gap varieties, stress tolerant varieties are having certain role, and natural resource management is also having certain role. So whether we have accounted how much the technology which has been generated from the management point of view that accounts to what extent of reduction. So having said that, what I understand, because we do have some kind of resilience from last year, yesterday that presentation and today's presentation. Rice yield is increasing, and we do have the increasing in carbon dioxide concentration and variations of rainfall. Some other factor associated with climate change, those are going on. Still, we are our production and productivity is going on. Some kind of resilience the system is having. Having said that, the abiotic stress is having some negative effect. So those negative effect, how much our varietal aspect is contributing to bridge the gap, and how much natural resource management, I think that is her question. So if that can be addressed by Dr. Pathak Saab or Dr. Rao Saab.
Okay, thank you. I think this is, of course, a critical question. Friends, let me tell you in a simple way rather. The varieties which are being developed almost every year, as you know, so far around 1,200 rice varieties have been officially released. And there are, of course, many others which are being grown by the farmers, which may not be having official release, but those are also getting cultivated. Yield is increasing. But if you see the potential yield of the varieties at the time of their release, we did one analysis, and what we have observed that in last few 3, 4, 5 decades, there has not been much gain or yield advantage with the new varieties. The gains which you could achieve is more resilience to biotic as well as abiotic stresses, more tolerant to disease, insects, and so on, improvement in quality, not only basmati, but also high protein rice, high zinc rice, and so on. So therefore, the yield potential of the varieties has remained more or less, I'm not saying exact, more or less same, but the natural resource management has really contributed, and entire credit should go to the farmers. They have really learned to grow the crops in a better way, saving water, applying fertilizer in much efficient way. And those are the ones which have contributed and still contributing in increasing production. Otherwise, even this year also, see, production and productivity, almost every crop has gone up, and India could harvest a record production of 296 million tons. So we are getting smarter and smarter, but still the gap is quite large. As I said, gap is 40 to even 65, 70%. And this is the area where only NRM, natural resource management, can play a vital role. Only if we can become even more efficient, that gap can be narrowed down further and further. At the same time, the breeders are also trying to come out with varieties with higher yield potential. Certainly, when the potential goes up, even with the same kind of management, yield is going to increase. So both the things are working. If you want a quantification of number, exactly what and how much, as per one estimate, fertilizer including organic manure and nutrient rather, it contributes around 35 to 40% expansion in irrigation, the remaining one, if we keep that varietal component in one place. Contribution of climate change, as we know that temperature is increasing, even then crop yield is increasing, so what is the role of climate change? Our analysis shows that had there been no climate change, then the production, which is 296 million ton this year, it would have been increased by another 10% or so. So that means it could have been crossed around 300 million tons or so. So that is the cost of climate change, which we are paying, or the whole country is paying almost every year. So this is roughly the numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir,
Okay.
If you can take one more question.
Yeah,
So
please take.
Oh, yes.
Dr. Vinod Khedikar, he has asked why DSR area is not increasing rapidly. I think the very motive of asking this question is DSR is age-old cultivation practices by Indian farmers. But subsequently, the scientific research has come out with many variants with mechanization for DSR. But despite that also, it is not increasing. Whether there is a problems with technology or science, or there is some gaps in policy issue. So I think the motive of his asking the question is like this: the DSR not increasing rapidly. Why?
Yes, your statement is right, but the connotation of why it is not increasing, that needs little bit elaboration. Let me tell you, so far as the science and the concept is concerned, it is perfect. There is no problem. A very good rice crop can be grown following direct seeded technique, and there are n number of examples and demonstrations where yield of DSR has been more or less similar to transplanted rice. But let me tell you, this particular technology, DSR, is knowledge intensive, it's size specific, and also timely intervention is very much required, in which not only farmer, but even our policymakers and scientists also fail many times. Weed, for example, is one major problem, and Dr. Sharma is here. See, if we cannot, there are several good molecules and technologies to control weed. But if you fail to control weed in right time by application of right molecules and right methodology, then the whole crop you are going to lose. So you have to sacrifice the whole crop. Now the timely intervention depends upon few things. Number one, the knowledge of the farmer. Number two, availability of the herbicides. Number three, the congenial condition, including weather and those kinds of things. So therefore, this knowledge intensivity, resource availability, and also some of these, our infrastructure facilities are really very much should be in tune to promote DSR. It is going to take time. It is going to take time because we are really, particularly farmers are not really very much educated about that technique. This year, as probably yesterday also you have seen that in Punjab, large number of farmers went for DSR because of the COVID, labor crisis, and so on. Most of the farmers have got benefit, but some farmers could not grow a good crop because of they could not control weed, and of course that thing became highlighted everywhere. Then the DSR system doesn't work, it is bad, something like that. But if you go into the real number, many farmers really could adapt, could use DSR, and they are really got the benefit. So therefore, all these 3-4 issues which I highlighted need to be addressed at the same time to make DSR a success. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, one
Dr.
more
Nayak,
yes,
Dr.
sir.
Nayak, you may take the last question. Thereafter, we will try to put this. The question Pratap Bhattacharya has posed just now.
Yeah.
Take it.
So it is to Dr. Pete Smith. Dr. Pete Smith, it's Dr. Nayak. And there is a question for you. Hello?
Yeah, he is listening. Tell.
How rice straw compost to 50% reduction of methane emission? It's question to you by Dr. Pratap Bhattacharya.
Okay, well, rice straw can reduce the overall greenhouse gas emissions by increasing the soil carbon, because the greenhouse gas emissions are a balance between soil carbon sequestration, methane emissions, and nitrous oxide emissions. Rice straw in the wrong circumstances can actually increase methane emissions, but it can contribute to mitigation by increasing soil carbon sequestration. So it really depends upon the flooding regime and the particular soil type and the conditions you have. So rice straw will tend to increase methane emissions rather than decrease them, but it increases soil carbon sequestration. But the balance varies between sites. So it's good for soil carbon sequestration. Generally speaking, will provide a substrate for methane emission. So it will increase emissions in most circumstances. But that, of course, varies by sites.
Thank you. Sir, it is over to you, Chairman, sir.
Okay, then rest of the questions you may pass to our keynote speaker as well as lead speaker. If some questions are there, please pass them and they will respond in writing. So before we wrap up this session, I would invite the comments of Dr. A.R. Sharma as well. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, sir. I think that's a very good opportunity to listen to the four speakers, including three of our own colleagues and one person outside.
If you please put the microphone very close to your mouth, then it will be nice.
Thank you very much, sir. I think it was a great pleasure to listen to the four speakers, including three of our own colleagues and one expert from outside. And many good points have been made. I'll just very briefly, I think time is very short, but maybe I'll send some of my observations to email to the organizer. Dr. Pathak, I think, made an excellent presentation on abiotic stress management. I also had some experience of working in these areas in in my opinion, mitigating those abiotic stresses it's possible to a certain extent, but I think more than that, in such areas where rice is grown under unfavorable situations, it is more important to diversify within the rice season and also outside the rice season. I think a lot of scope exists for growing the same crop of rice in the rain-fed lowland. And we always talk about the rain-fed lowland rice furrows, but the fact is that even still today, more than 10 million hectares of area is lying vacant. And I think if that area is utilized, I think the shortage of wild seeds and sustainability persistence will ensure. I'm of the opinion that DSR must be promoted in the irrigated rice as well. In the rain-fed situation, whether it is upland or lowland, DSR is already, I think, practiced to a very large extent. But in the irrigated areas of, say, non-coastal areas of Punjab and Haryana and other areas, I think that DSR technology is available, but in my opinion, there is a lack of will to actually practice and promote benefited rice. I think this year we estimate that something like 15 to 20% of the rice in Punjab is converted to DSR. And I think in other areas also wherever the irrigated rice is grown, DSR must be promoted. And why blame the farmers all the time? I think let us first promote it at our own farm. Let us say that in all the areas at our own farm we grow this DSR. Dr. Rao, okay, one more point I want to make about Dr. Pathak's comment. You know, rice will be grown by the farmers as long as you said, water is available free and there is a surety of the market. You know, even in the Bundelkhand region, which is otherwise known as a dry region, and the soils are not at all good for growing rice. But with the extension of irrigation facilities, the traditional crops of pulse and oil are on the decline. And you will be surprised to know that even rice is becoming a significant crop in the Bundelkhand region. And in the Rabi season also, instead of growing chickpea and mustard, I think more areas getting converted into wheat. So I think these decisions are taken by the farmer depending upon the availability of irrigation water and availability of market. And these things are going to prevail. I think unless we impose and what could if we ban some of these crops in such areas, it is not likely to happen. From Dr. Rao's presentation, I could get the impression that conservation agriculture is not much relevant in the rice and rice-based cropping system. I think that is not a fact. In my opinion, let us first promote conservation agriculture, maybe in a partial manner in the rabi season crops and in the summer season crops, and after we gain confidence in the success of this technology in these two seasons, I think conservation agriculture principles are very much applicable even in the three-season rice crop as well. Then I can talk more about it, but since the time is limited, I'll stop here only. And then organic matter, I think Dr. Vishwapati Mandal also made a comment that we have to take organic matter from outside and then we have to apply it to the soil. I think, in my opinion, that is not a practical proposition. We must grow the organic matter in situ and then recycle in the soil to build the soil health. I think this is a more practical and the best way of doing it is to recycle the crop residues as Professor Ratalal very often says that the residues must be recycled into that required to maintain the health of our Indian soil. And I think wherever the residues are available for recycling, they must not be burnt and they must be recycled back into the soil. One final comment which I want to make, I think Dr. Pathak also mentioned a lot of technologies which are available and which are ready to be transferred. I think it is important that we see the effect or impact of those technologies on the ground level. We must try to translate what we achieve in our on-station trials on the farmer field in a large area. I think this DSR, residue recycling, conservation agriculture, precision apple management. I think we have been talking for the last 30, 40 years about precision apple management, including use of research charts and radio meter, SPAD meter and things like that. But not much has happened on the ground. I think it is essential that the technology that we claim to have developed is implemented on the ground level. First at our own farm on large area and then on the farmer's field. I think these are some of the currently made some comments, but the more systematic and elaborate comments maybe I will be able to send through email. And the point which DG made yesterday, I think I was impressed by that point. He said that the rice production in future is not going to be the same as it was there in the past, because our land is shrinking, the soil is degrading, water is not available, labor is not available, lot of emission of greenhouse gases, and above all, the farmers are not so much inclined to go in for agriculture and rice production. So the whole scenario is going to change in the future, and therefore we must change the way we grow crop production and especially rice. I think that there is a need for more innovative thinking and more innovative approaches to grow the crop in a more profitable and sustainable manner. So with these few comments, I thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. A.R. Sharma for your comments. Friends, you all will agree that all the 4 presentations today, including 1 keynote and 3 lead speakers, they made a wonderful presentation and justified the sustainable rice farming, the topic for 4th session of this International Rice Congress. All presentations probably try to bring in one viewpoint that if you manage the stresses properly, if you manage the soil and its health, if you manage the good agricultural practices, then you may not blame rice in future, because we say that it is water guzzling crops and rice requires this much water, it emits this much emission. All these things are there. But if you follow the standard practices, the conservation practices, the resource conservation technology, the good practices of soil health care, manage the biodiversity within the framework, then probably we'll be able to justify, because you cannot substitute rice. Views were exchanged here that in irrigated sector, the rice production in irrigated ecology and rainfed ecology, there are there is a great distinction from the climate change point of view. The adaptation or other mitigation options, all these were discussed. Many strategies Pete has put forward, positive impact, negative impact, everything was brought in front of us. But message clearly is, the Indian experience suggests the moment you bring in any unirrigated area under irrigation, the first thing happens is whatever cropping system was there, it is being replaced by cereals. Within cereals, if enough water is available, first by rice, followed by another cereal. So this is the situation, how we moved from millets, from oilseeds, pulses to cereal systems. And presently, till last 2 years back, up to last 2 years back, we have situation like 40% irrigated area and 60% rain-fed area. 40% was feeding, bringing 60% production, food grain production, and 60% rain-fed area was bringing 40% food grain production. So in last 5 years, there was increase of roughly 5 to 6 million hectare area under irrigated KT. So now we have the situation of 50% irrigated and 50% rain-fed. This time, one significant change is there. Every time, whenever irrigated area was increasing, the area under cereal system was also increasing. But this time, this additional 4 or 5 million hectare area increase, there was not much increase in rice cultivation, because this gain was at the cost of more area under micro and sprinkler irrigation, mostly in horticultural, vegetables, and high value crops. So this kind of change now we are observing on ground. So if you talk of biodiversity or agricultural diversity, then this proportion of irrigated and rain-fed ecologies matters a lot, more so in the case of rice cultivation. So if you talk of sustainable rice farming, then these facts and these discussions what we had today, these are of utmost importance. CH has aptly brought that if you go for conservation practices and the conservation tillage practices or resource conservation technologies, these are the options. Probably, Kalyani, could you please mute yourself? Kalyani, yeah. CH was not meant to say that the rice ecology or rice systems, they are not fit for conservation agriculture. What he meant to say is that the benefits of conservation agriculture, if you want to maximize the benefits of conservation agriculture, then the rice systems or rice system needs to be.
Sir, please unmute, sir. Chaudhary, sir, unmute, sir.
From that end, somebody muted me. I asked someone, Kalyani, please mute yourself. And Himanshu has also clearly brought out the changes in rice system and rice non-rice system. Within rice and non-rice system, if you go for rice wheat system and rice some other non-wheat systems. So distinct variations are there. And management practices, if you want to maximize the benefits, if you draw maximum ecosystem services from this, Pete's presentation is clearly brought out. If you manage the crops and cropping system in a specific manner, then you can optimize and maximize the ecosystem benefits. These are the messages coming out from these presentations. And upcoming health of intensive us. Fact is, if you see the consumption pattern in India, the fertilizer consumption pattern or input consumption pattern, then you will see then the very, very responsive varieties, newly bred responsive varieties, they are giving positive responses to nutrition. And therefore, the nutrient consumption was increasing. But what recent trend suggests that maximum consumption is there in Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, followed by Haryana and Punjab. Now, if you match the analogy of length of growing period with this, it mismatches. So somewhere there is some mistake in our planning, and we should understand the concepts of length of growing period, bringing the streamlining the rice ecologies, whether it is rain-fed, upland, midland, or lowland, and then coming to the western part of India. So from that point of view, entire IGP, be it middle IGP or northern IGP, southern IGP or eastern IGP or trans IGP, in whole Indo-Gangetic plains, the issue of declining organic carbon, it is really the most touching issue, and this single issue requires intensive solutions and intensive campaigning countrywide for country of size of India. And more, this kind of intensifications are required across the South Asia. As Pete has said, South Asia, is Southeast Asia, the remaining Asia part, and Southern America or Latin America. So this will make this will bring better understanding in the case of rice ecologies in the knowledge spectrum, and we'll be able to come up with better strategies in future. I'm thankful to all four speakers who made excellent presentation. My colleague, Dr. A.R. Sharma, who was here and who gave very critical comments. Thank you very much, each one of you. Both the conveners deserve thanks here. But please, Dr. A.K. Nayak and Dr. Garnayak, please note down all the questions coming up. Questions, counter questions, queries, and observations are there. Please forward them to the concerned speakers. With this, I stop here. Thank you very much for the organizers. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. We will note, sure, sir, we will note down those questions and you will send to the concerned speaker. So now, sir, it is time to just a formality to vote of thanks, to propose a proposed vote of thanks to both the speakers. They have nicely conducted the session. The important sessions are sustainable rice farming. And also because this is directly related to farmers and many queries will be facing by the farmers. That's why out of curiosity, many questions are there. Those have been discussed and also been answered by the speaker. Again, sir, thanks. Thank you very much for your valuable time. I'm also thankful on behalf of myself as well as the organizers and also the host institute to all the four speakers, Dr. Pathak, Dr. Srinivasa Rao, Dr. Biswapati Mandal, and also Pete Smith for their very, very recent data they have presented and also the recent line of work so far as sustainable rice farming is concerned. I'm also very much thankful to the convener, Dr. Nayak, and also the rapporteurs, Dr. Tikam Singh, as well as the Rahul Tripathi, and
Dr. Nayak.
all the participants that is sustainable rice farming. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Chaudhary, Dr. Sharma, Dr. Nayak, Garnayak Saab. Thank you for your
Sir,
time.
a small announcement. Sir, a small announcement. So we do have a oral session going on. So those who are attending this session, please go for the another connections which you have been provided to you, so that you can attend the oral session parallelly going on. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.